Have you ever felt like your identity was a role you were acting, a performance you just couldn't continue anymore? Like the version of you the world expects is slowly breaking apart, but something deep inside you quietly whispers, "Good." What if the collapse of your ego isn't the end of you, but the start of something much more authentic? Something your nervous system has been asking for, and your soul has been gently arranging behind the scenes. Because here's the part almost nobody talks about. Your ego was never designed for happiness. It was built for protection. It was created for survival. And that's why ego death, even though it feels frightening, can also feel like finally breathing out after holding your breath your entire life. But what really happens to your brain and your awareness after ego death? And how was Carl Jung already describing this experience long before modern neuroscience could measure it? Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand not only what ego death does to your brain, but why it might be the exact medicine your mental health has been needing, and why the part of you that resists it is also the part that secretly desires it. We live in a world where the word ego gets thrown around all the time. He has a big ego. She needs to drop her ego. But what actually is the ego? From a psychological point of view, your ego is the identity you built to function in the world. It is the I you believe yourself to be. It is made of stories, labels, childhood roles, and social masks, and most of it was programmed without your clear, conscious choice. Jung called this the persona, the social mask we wear, and beneath that mask, he said, lives the shadow. All the parts of you that you pushed away just to be accepted, approved of, or safe. But the ego holds on to that mask like it's a life jacket in deep water, because from the ego's perspective it is. Now here's where things become interesting. According to brain imaging studies using fMRI on meditation and psychedelic experiences, including research published in journals like Nature and Frontiers in Human Neuroscience, when people report ego dissolution, there is a visible shift in brain activity. Activity in the default mode network, also called the DMN, the part of the brain connected to self, focused thinking, and the voice of your inner narrator, drops significantly. This is the same brain network that tends to be overactive in people dealing with anxiety and depression. It is the part that repeats thoughts like, "I'm not good enough," "What if they don't like me?" or "I have to hold everything together." So when your ego starts to dissolve, whether through deep meditation, breathwork, psychedelic journeys, or a spiritual crisis, it's not just a philosophical idea, it's a biological event. And that biological unraveling can feel chaotic because your brain links identity with safety. When the mask begins to fall away, your nervous system may panic. It can feel like dying, but it isn't physical death, it is the death of a false identity. So what happens after ego death? After that mental mask fades, does your brain permanently change? Can ego death truly help heal trauma? And how did Jung describe this psychological rebirth decades before neuroscience had the language for it? That's what we're exploring next. So imagine you've just gone through what feels like an emotional earthquake. Your ego, that constant voice in your mind that always needed to manage the story, has gone silent. Maybe it even disappeared for a while. You're unsure if you feel free or if you're falling apart. But here's the surprising truth neuroscience is beginning to confirm. When your ego dissolves, your brain does not break down. It actually begins to repair. And what follows might explain why so many people report deep peace, clarity, and even happiness after ego death. Underneath the noise of identity, there is a deeper intelligence waiting to rise. When the default mode network quiets, whether from meditation, psychedelics, near-death experiences, or intense breathwork, other areas of the brain become more connected. Communication between brain regions increases in ways that normally don't happen. Researchers at Imperial College London describe this as entropic brain activity. In simple words, your brain starts forming new connections it usually would not make. It's like different musicians in an orchestra suddenly playing together in a new and creative way. Your sense of self becomes softer, more flexible, more open. You begin to notice that maybe you are not just your thoughts. Maybe you are the awareness observing them. A study published in Frontiers in Psychology showed that the stronger the ego dissolution experience, the greater the long-term drop in depression and anxiety symptoms. Think about that. It's almost like your brain receives a reset. Jung might have called this a meeting with the self, with a capital S, the deeper and wiser center of your psyche that has been hidden behind fear-based ego patterns. This is not just poetic language. There are real biological changes happening. Research on long-term meditators and psilocybin therapy shows increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, the area linked to empathy, insight, and emotional balance. At the same time, activity in the amygdala, the brain's fear center, decreases. That means after ego death, the brain often becomes less reactive and more thoughtful. You get less stuck in repeating loops like, "I'm not enough," or "they're judging me," and more present with what is actually happening right now, not just the story your mind is creating. But here is the uncomfortable question almost no one asks. If the ego dissolves, what remains? Who are you without your history, your name, your achievements, or even your pain? Is there a risk of losing yourself too much? Can someone go so far that they cannot return? This is where Jung's wisdom becomes essential. He warned that tearing down the ego without integration can be just as risky as never questioning it at all. So what does integration mean? How do you rebuild an identity that is connected to your true nature instead of your trauma or conditioning? Jung called this journey individuation. He believed the human psyche is layered, not broken. When we peel back those layers, we do not find emptiness. We find meaning. Individuation is the process of becoming who you truly are, not the version others expect, not the persona that keeps everyone comfortable, but a whole self that includes light and shadow, conscious and unconscious parts working together. This process often begins after ego death, because only then are we forced to ask honestly, who am I really? And that question is not meant to stay unanswered. It is an invitation to rebuild, not the old ego, but a healthier bridge between your inner world and the outer world. A self that listens to the soul, not just to fear. From a neuroscience angle, this rebuilding stage involves neuroplasticity, the brain's natural ability to rewire itself based on new experiences. After ego death, old neural pathways shaped by trauma, roles, and outdated beliefs are interrupted. And in that space of interruption, new patterns can form. If you support this phase with mindfulness therapy, creative expression, or spiritual reflection, you can truly reshape how your brain understands identity, emotion, and connection. This is why many people report stronger intuition, more empathy, less attachment to thoughts, a deeper search for meaning, and a renewed connection to creativity after ego death. But if this phase is ignored, if you try to return to normal too quickly, it can lead to confusion, feeling unreal, or using spirituality to avoid deeper healing. That is why integration matters so much. You have seen behind the curtain. You cannot unsee it. But you can build a new way of living that includes what you have learned instead of hiding from it. Jung believed the deeper self wants this wholeness. It pulls you toward it, sometimes through breakdowns you thought were destroying your life. Panic attacks, burnout, creative blocks, identity crisis. What if those moments were not failures, but invitations? What if your ego fell apart not because you were damaged, but because you were ready to wake up? Now comes the real work. Integration. You have felt the silence after the ego dissolved. But you cannot stay in that emptiness forever. Awakening without grounding can feel overwhelming. Rebirth requires care. It requires daily practices that support your nervous system, your mind, and your spirit as they adjust to a new way of being. One powerful tool is somatic grounding. Trauma does not live only in thoughts. It lives in the nervous system. That is why understanding your awakening intellectually does not always make you feel better. Your body may still feel unsafe or overloaded. So you must work with the body. Movement, breath, expression. Your body is built to complete stress cycles, but modern life teaches us to suppress everything. In nature, animals shake after stress. They tremble and release. Humans can do this too. Intuitive movement, shaking your body for a few minutes, deep breathing techniques like box breathing, cold showers, stretching with sound humming, walking barefoot on natural ground. These practices tell your nervous system, we are safe now. And safety is the foundation for rebuilding. Another tool is shadow work. After ego death, you might want to stay in light and positivity. But real growth means facing what still hides in the dark. The shadow includes the parts of you that you judge or reject: jealousy, anger, shame, hidden desires. These parts are not evil, they are misunderstood. You can begin with simple questions. What part of myself do I hide? What do I secretly resent? What am I afraid to feel? If writing feels difficult, speak your thoughts out loud, record them. The goal is not to fix yourself, it is to witness yourself. What you can name, you can integrate. What you ignore grows stronger in silence. Another powerful approach is recognizing archetypes inside you. Jung believed the psyche contains universal patterns, energies that appear in myths and dreams across cultures. After ego death, these inner figures may become clearer. The inner child wanting care, the warrior wanting strength, the mystic seeking trust, the caregiver wanting to serve, the trickster challenging you, the wise one offering insight. Instead of fighting these energies, talk to them internally. Ask which part is leading today. What does it need? Understanding that you are not one fixed identity, but a living system of inner voices can bring compassion and flexibility. And finally, conscious connection is essential. Ego death can push you toward isolation, but healing happens in safe relationships. Our nervous systems regulate each other. Being around calm, grounded people helps your body feel stable again. Choose spaces where your new self can be seen without judgment. A trusted friend, a support circle, a therapist who understands transformation. When your ego dissolves, it can feel like you are disappearing. But in loving connection, you realize you are not vanishing, you are emerging. If you have experienced ego death, or even small glimpses of it, you are not broken. You are in a sacred in-between space. You do not have to return to who you used to be. You are allowed to rebuild with awareness, honesty, and softness. These practices are not just techniques. They are bridges back to your body, your intuition, and your true self. If this message resonates, reflect on what part of your old identity you have recently released. Maybe you are still between stories, between identities, between who you were and who you are becoming. That space is not empty, it is fertile. You are not alone in this process. Growth can feel lonely, but many are walking this path of deeper self-understanding. Step by step, breath by breath, you are learning to live without the mask. And that is not the end of you. It is the beginning of something more real than you ever imagined.